What's up guys, welcome to this video. I'm going to be doing a breakdown for the Meme Runner visual effects that you saw at the beginning. I'm going to break down the 13 shots that you just saw back to back, the minute clip, and I'm going to go through them one by one and just sort of give you an idea of what went into that bit of art. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So here we're in After Effects and we're in the first shot here, which is the car that flies through the text that zooms into the screen at the beginning. So what we've got here is basically a drone shot looking towards the city of London during dusk hours. There's a very nice contrast of colour there, which has been graded over in Premiere Pro. But in this scene, as you can see, there is the drone footage, which is just basic drone footage. Nothing's actually been done to that in here at all. There's no stabilisation. So here we have the 3D model itself that flies into the scene. The adjustment layer here is purely a heat distortion layer. That is basically, I've added an adjustment layer to go over the entire scene, and then added a heat distortion effect that gives it like rippling, so it looks like there's that heat and distortion coming from the car itself as it flies over. And then this effect here, which is the camera, it's just a 3D camera. What that allows me to do is it basically puts a fake camera into the scene, which allows me to control the focus and aperture and depth of field of the 3D model, because a 3D model is literally just a 3D model plonked into the scene, so there's no depth of field, there's no focus pulling, because it's just being a model being put in. So we have to replicate the camera that is being used, that has focus and has aperture and etc., and an exposure, to be able to control it to make it look more realistic. So that's what that camera's for. It's just a fake 3D camera which allows me to control the focus pull. And then a spotlight, which is how I replicated the sun. On the spotlight here, if I go to four views, you'll see the spotlight is sort of in the same place as the sun. So this is the right hand view, this is the top down view, so you'll see where the spotlight's coming from. And I animated that to move with the car. So what happens is, as it flies through, there's actually sunlight hitting the top of the car, giving it different shadows, and that's the purpose of that. So when you all put it together, stick the motion blur back on to the layer of the car, it just makes for a fairly realistic looking effect. And because it's going so quick, you really can't tell the difference. Sorry for any noise behind me, Mr. Mr. Bland is trying to put together a piece of equipment that we've just bought. So we jump into the second shot here. The second shot we've got here is the side of the car, which is Matt's favourite shot from the short. The reason for this is it has a huge, if you've ever seen the film Interstellar, it gives you a huge Interstellar vibe. And the reason for that is there's a scene where it's literally where I got the inspiration from, where the camera is actually plonked on the side of the spaceship as it's flying into the planet, or into the atmosphere, and it has that kind of epic feel. So what we've got here, again, a very simple bit of footage. There's the standard drone shot just on its own, just doing its own thing, and then we've got the 3D model, which I've literally just brought in. It's completely stationary. The 3D model's not moving at all. I've just pulled it into the camera lens and added a 3D camera, again, to have that depth of field. So if you look here, you can actually see that the focus is at the front of the car, and the back of the car's blurred. There's no blur layer to this. I haven't added a blur effect or anything like that, or a camera blur. This is actually real depth of field being generated by the 3D camera. So the 3D camera is basically replicating the real camera. And then again, at the end, another spotlight to replicate the sun. And if you actually watch in this clip here, very briefly, it might be quite hard to see, but you can actually see a glint of the sun hitting the step where you would put your foot to get into the car. This shot, again, I really like this shot, and it was planned. We knew what we wanted here, but the thing with visual effects, when you're coming into it at quite a novice level like I am, and I don't know everything I'm doing, so with this scene I wasn't sure how we were going to have the vocalized hologram of Voss talking on the monitor. It turns out there is a very nice effect built in to After Effects called Audio Spectrum, and what that basically does is it creates a real life wavelength or waveform from audio that you can add into the scene. So here you can see the effect of the audio spectrum. All I've done is link this audio spectrum effect to Beth's vocals here, And what that's doing is it's taking the waveform from real-time audio, and it's causing those spikes, and it's causing that waveform to make it look realistic. I actually added a CC light rays effect to this one to make it look like there's a bit like an audio buffering light going across the screen. And then it's quite an easy. The last thing I added here is actually a sort of like a background for the monitor, which just has some fractal noise, and the fractal noise basically disrupts and sort of like fluctuates behind. So the whole time while she's talking, you have little cubes that look like futuristic holograms all popping up and doing their own little thing, and it just adds a bit more depth to the scene.
I've updated your GPS with the coordinates.
Okay, so here we have one of my favourite shots of the entire short, and that's because I really like this bit of visual effects here. There's so much going on, but in so little time, so I'll break it down bit by bit. We have so the bottom two layers are purely just the footage, and the reason there's two is because I wanted to add a turbulent displacement straight to the footage. So I duplicated the footage and added it straight to it, and what that allowed me to do is it allowed me to basically have this warping effect around the car. So that goes down as the car comes down. So you've got the two layers of the actual footage there, and then we've got the 3D object here. This is just the 3D object on its own, and as you can see, there's actually a shadow being cast on the ground there. You actually go into the 3D element itself and you look at the mapping. What you can do, and I did actually do it in this instance, is you can add a plane to the ground. So basically you can add a piece of flooring, which is what this is here. So you see it says matte shadow. What you're looking at is a bit of flooring, and as it comes down, the shadow gets darker because obviously you're getting closer to the ground. And this was actually a last minute addition. So on this 3D model, what I did is I took two balls, I took two spheres, and actually stuck them up inside the car's engines here. So this isn't part of the normal model. I actually added these myself. And the reason for that is if I had two bright orange lights, it looks like the hot engines. And what that allowed me to do is then add a heat distortion over those, and they ripple. So the rippling of the orange balls are essentially, they look like engines producing heat. And then the last sort of ending to this effect, which is again something I added last minute, was actually two smoke effects. So what I added here was particular, and what particular is it creates an element in the 3D space of a particle. So you can have fire, you can have money flying around, you can have water vapor, sparks, anything like that. I obviously just chose smoke, and I chose the gravity and the evolution to push the smoke in a downwards direction. So as it comes down, the smoke's being ejected from the ports of the engines, and that's supposed to emulate the hydraulics and whatnot, and all the steam and the engines trying to stop the car crashing into the floor. And then I added just a very simple smoke effect to the ground, which is literally just a dust wave that you can get online. There's loads of free dust waves online on YouTube, royalty-free ones that people just put onto green screens. So I removed it from the green screen, added a blur effect to give it some depth of field in the distance, and then when that's actually underneath with the two dust waves here, which is just these two smoke things coming at the bottom of the car, it just makes it look like it's kicking up dust. So as it comes down, you've got the heat distortion on the back footage, you've got the smoke, and then you're just seeing this dust kick up, and it makes it look real. It gives it a real nice effect. And then obviously the brake lights are nice and glowing to give it that sort of nighttime feel as it comes in for a landing. This shot was proving a little bit troublesome. This shot was proving a little bit troublesome. Reason for that is purely Matt is walking away from, well, nothing. If I take away the model, there's nothing going on back there. He's just walking. The issue we've got is that I obviously had to mask him out around the car. So I needed to have a mask that was tracking him, because obviously when he walked in front of this object, it wasn't actually behind him. So each thing had an extra duplication. So I drew around Matt himself. In this original footage here, whilst Matt is still there, there's actually a mask that is going around him. So I basically tracked a mask onto his movements, and then that sort of develops as he walks in front of the car. I didn't worry about his head or his foot. It's only the bits that go in front of the car, so his coat. So as his coat swings, it's just sort of, you know, there's this mask that's following his movements. And I wanted the car to look as realistic as possible, so I've added some noise to the car itself. So that car obviously has its own noise effect added to it. So we've got the element, we've got the color. I left the blur is off because there's a 3D camera in there. But we've got this noise effect that just gives it a bit of grain to match the camera's grain, because it is dark in this scene, so the camera was a little bit noisy. And then there's a drop shadow, which just makes it look a bit, a bit more present. It's darkening the areas underneath the car, making it look like it's, there. And there's actually a 3D track as well, 3D camera tracker, which I track to the trees, which makes the car just not move. And then pretty basic effect on the door here. I separated the model, so in Element 3D, I separated the model of the car, so this door, the rest of the car is all together, as you can see, but the door is off. So what I did is I separated the door and put it into a separate group, which is this one here. And then what that allows me to do is group 4. All I have to do is animate group 4. So in here, group 4 has its own animation and basically just a rotation. So that animates on a swivel. So right here we've got the door closing, and it gives a bit more of a realistic effect, because the car is in motion whilst Matt is in motion. Okay, so I don't know why I said it like that. So here we've got the effect that a lot of people quite enjoyed, just because it's quite funny. It's Knuckles popping up on the phone as a hologram. Nothing too difficult in this one. So we've tracked the motion again, and then it's quite a simple effect. If you just look at the footage itself, it is just a phone being held by Matt. There's actually a bit of denoiser added to this, and then we've got a glow, just a white glow screen to make it look like the phone's actually on, because if you look here, you can quite easily tell it's not, whereas that gives it a little bit of something. And then again, that's that bit there, and then the 3D model of Knuckles pops up in. Here he is. And then he just spins on an axis here, give it that hologram effect of it moving up and down, and that is being cast also by the spotlight here. So if you can see the spotlight here is moving up and down, and it gives him that glow. And what that allows us to do is, when we added the sound effects in afterwards, you have that zoom, and that's kind of replicating the hologram scanning for Knuckles. So that was kind of what we were going for. Okay, so earlier I said that the effect where the car landed was one of my favourites, and this is very much so my other one of my other favourites. It's the scene where Knuckles' head explodes, and the reason I like this scene is it's quite gnarly. So yeah, there's these chunks that come out the head. So as it flies in, you can see that there's this element of dark brain matter that sort of spews around the room. Now, the reason this effect took longer than it probably should have was due to the lighting in the room. It's quite easy to mask a head out of a shot, but it wasn't in this case because of the darkness behind, and because of the light shining through the Knuckles suit that we very graciously put together with an inflatable Fat Man suit and a basketball on our head. There was this issue of it was casting a red light around the room. So if you look behind Matt here, there's this red glow which is basically a reflection from the suit. The issue that caused is when I wanted to remove the head, this specific couple of frames here, the background was white because I had to take it from when there was a clean plate. So this was the cleanest plate I could have used, but it's white. But if I added it here, the rest of the room is red, so it didn't fit. So I had to do the very, very, very tedious task of manually taking screenshots per frame and then dropping them in, layering them in, and then cropping around them. What's going on back there? You can see this is probably one of the most complicated effects on the entire shot, or in fact it is the most complicated effect in the entire shot. And that's purely because all of these scenes here are individual frames. So that's a frame. That's a frame. So if I just turn this off, that's basically what the effect's being built on. It's built on frame by frame pictures of a clean plate, and that, I can tell you now, was a lot of hassle to build. And what that does is, as the head explodes, the head's gone, there's still that neck section, and then there's just blood spewing from it. So it adds that nice gnarly effect of this head exploding, there's chunks going everywhere, with the sound effects and the quick action. it just looks quite nice. This is a scene where we have the lightsaber flying into Ren's hand, aka me. The most annoying thing for this was tracking the eyes, because every time the lights go out, I had to replace the eyes that were being tracked. So essentially, the real footage, it was just a mask, and it was just a mesh wire over the eyes, so you could quite clearly see my eyes, and it just looked awful. So I basically created a shape with just a black solid, added like a bit of shininess to it, and then stuck it over the eye holes so that they looked like they were there. And then all we had here, so this movement here, as you saw from the side by side, Matt was literally sitting next to me, chucking me the lightsaber. And all I did for this sequence was I basically layered the footage, again masked it out bit by bit, adding a wire tool to remove the lightsaber's head. I added a 3D model of a lightsaber and just animated this flying in, added a motion blur, because it was basically the exact same model of lightsaber, just the 3D model looked better, it actually looked more real. So it flies in slowly, or quickly, sorry, and blurry, and then as it matches up with the real lightsaber throw, it just disappears. So you go from the fake lightsaber for literally 4 frames to the real lightsaber, and then I catch it. And as you can see here in the real footage, I'm holding our toy lightsaber with the blue end, and all I did to remove that was add a wire remove tool. Alternatively, you can just mask it out by layering footage, whatever's easier for you. But yeah, it works either way. And then the ending was purely just a saber effect. Again, free plugin that you can get from Video Copilot for After Effects. It's called Saber. And last but by no means least, it's the final shot of the short, which is the gunshot. I don't feel like too much has to be said about this, but I will say that obviously the gun was plastic, so we didn't cut the barrels out, so they just had these little plastic nozzles. So I tracked on 2 little black holes to make it look like a barrel, then just expanded them and made them faint so they look like they've got some depth, and they sort of fade into this barrel. And then a very simple effect, what we did is I was standing on the other side of the camera with a torch, turning it on and off in rhythm, and then Matt replicated the shots at the same time. So that gave us that lighting, so we didn't have to do that in visual effects. It looked kind of real because the light goes on when the shot goes off. And then for the effect, it's just a muzzle flash, a heat distortion, and a camera shake, and then a bit of smoke. And all in all, that gives it this nice sort of heat distortion coming out the gun as you fire. And then there's another muzzle flash there. Again, heat distortion, camera shake, some smoke, and it just gives it that nice sort of quite gnarly, quite gritty gunshot feel of it's shaking the entire room as you fire. It gives that weapon some weight behind it. And that's it. That's pretty much the breakdown. I'm hoping I didn't drone on too much. I will cut this down as much as possible for you guys. And I hope if you sort of wanted to get to VFX, or you're getting into VFX and you thought, oh, that's quite cool, I'd like to sort of replicate some of those effects, I hope I've given you a good enough idea of what was done. If there's any effects that you want, like a proper breakdown, like a step by step, let me know, and we can work on that in the future. But other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you found this interesting, and see you on the next video.